Okay, so we're going to continue talking about early adulthood. We're going to zoom in on a few of the emotional and social developmental issues of this stage. And as you know, we always start with good old Eric Erickson. And during the early adulthood years, again, we're talking 20s and 30s, the primary task really of the person is to develop a sense of intimacy or get connected in a very close way to a partner. If you are not able to accomplish this, you're going to end up feeling kind of a sense of isolation and disconnected from others. So the task is really to find, a partner kind of for your life. Now, there's an interesting concept called the social clock. The social clock is kind of what society expects in terms of when certain milestones should be met. So if you're in your 20s and 30s, and we know the task is to find a partner, folks might ask you questions, especially if you're dating someone. Are you going to get engaged? When are you setting your marriage date? Or then once you're married, for a couple of seconds, they'll start asking, when are you going to have your first baby? And so this pressure of the social clock can be quite difficult for many to cope with. And it happens throughout the entire lifespan, but it seems to be pretty significant during these early adulthood years. An example of when it can impact you later is at the age of retirement. When are you going to retire? Those kinds of things. So people are asking you to kind of follow the social norms. And as you know, our norms are changing to some extent. It used to be that folks got married much earlier. Now they're kind of doing a little bit of their career foundation or even getting established in careers before they're getting married. And there's a lot of variability, obviously, of what happens. Let's talk about love a little bit more. We were talking about intimacy. So Sternberg, we saw him when we looked at the triarchic theory of intelligence. Well, he also has a triangular theory of love. So he likes the number 3, apparently. And he talks about, kind of 3 components to love: intimacy, passion, and commitment. And he really says that all 3 of these variables are very important in a relationship. And intimacy is really that kind of emotional connection with a partner. Passion, obviously, we need to be attracted to someone and feel, there certainly is a sexual component to significant other relationships, and feeling that kind of high of the love and all. And then commitment, you need to also have a strong commitment. So you could be in a relationship where you're sharing innermost secrets and there's tons of passion, but maybe the commitment's lacking. You haven't kind of said, yeah, you're the one I want to be with for the rest of my life. Well, that's an important variable. We need really all 3 of those. And we'll talk a little bit more on our cohabitation message board on commitment issues and how that may play a role. So he basically says we kind of start relationships out focused on passionate love, and then it shifts into more companionate love. So in the beginning, the fireworks, the, kind of emotional roller coaster stuff is really what kind of drives the relationship. And later on in life, our relationship is a little bit more by having a reliable, steady companion. It doesn't mean that passion is gone, but it just isn't the primary focus any longer. There are other needs that are a little bit more important as your relationships gets more established. So if we take another look at relationships, there's some good news here about being married. It tends to be connected to higher levels of happiness or well-being. And in terms of adding children into the picture, it then tends to actually increase happiness as long as the marriage was pretty good to start off with. If there was a issue in the marriage in the beginning, then the addition of a child into that family unit can certainly put in more stress on the family and can be problematic. Having a child is certainly a stressful event, even though it's an exciting one, because it is a lot of new responsibilities and new routines and many different things that have to happen. But the idea here is that if you have a well-established marriage, it's going to hopefully turn out to be a very happy family also. Unfortunately, not all marriages do last. We know that there's a lot of marriages, unfortunately, close to half of them that end up in divorce. And many of those do happen within the first 7 years of marriage, but certainly they can happen at any point. And it seems that although both the husband and wife are negatively impacted, males tend to be a little bit more negatively impacted. And the reason for this has to do with the social support system, and our societal expectations and norms. As a female, it is pretty typical and usual for you to, share an emotional intimacy with your friends and have a pretty strong support system. Many males are really relying on their significant other, their wife, to serve that purpose and meet their emotional needs. So when the relationship ends, the female usually has a broader support system to lean on and to help them through. And as you recall from the resilience chapter, having a support system through any difficult event is really critical in terms of getting through it. So it doesn't mean that they're going to have a forever difficulty with it, but it is a little bit more difficult because they have, you know, stereotypically speaking, less support around that. So those are just a few of the issues. Obviously, you can dive into more of them in the chapter. Most students really do enjoy this because many of you are in the early adulthood years, so you can relate to a lot of the content. So I hope you too enjoy the content of this chapter.